Hey everyone, it's Emily. Welcome back to Series About Series. Today we're going to be talking about seasons 4 and 5 of Supernatural. Now, the last video that I posted was kind of overwhelmingly negative, and I did promise that this video was going to be more positive, and I think it will be. So I am so excited to get into these next two seasons because Season 4, Destiel is introduced, and my Dean cast trash self is so excited to gush about the small moments that Season 4 and 5 bring us as shippers, which of course leads me to airing out my biases. I ship Dean and Cass. I believe Dean is bisexual, and I do not like Mark Pellegrino. Mark plays Nick and Lucifer on Supernatural, and I'm not going to go into it fully, but he's said some problematic stuff outside the show, including but not limited to making rape jokes, using ableist slurs, and being Islamophobic. We heavily disagree on human rights and politics in general, so that does color my opinion of him and the character. I think he's a terrific actor, but knowing what I know about him, it does make me highly dislike the character of Lucifer, which, I mean, he's the devil, so I think we're okay. If you don't know how this whole thing works, I'm going to give a summary of the two seasons, and then I will go into my opinion of them. Last video I did was covering about 45 hours of television, and today, well, we only have to do a measly 33 hours, and yet somehow this summary is longer than the other one. So let's get right into it, shall we? To quickly recap, at the end of season 2, Dean made a deal to bring Sam back from the dead. This deal resulted in Dean being killed and sent to hell at the end of season 3. So season 4 opens with Dean digging himself out of his own grave. He's alive again, woohoo! But he has no idea how, and he has this nasty handprint scar on his shoulder. Something definitely gripped him tight and raised him from perdition, but they just don't know what. Enter Pamela Barnes. Pamela is a psychic friend of Bobby's who performs a seance to figure out what it was that raised Dean from hell. During the seance, the creature, Destiel, warns Pamela not to spy on his true form. She continues to do so, and her eyes are burnt out. Whatever Destiel is, it's scary. It has all the demons, Ruby included, terrified. Dean and Bobby decide to summon the creature to a barn, armed with everything they've got just in case they need to kill it. In walks Destiel, a character introduction that ties for first place with another character that we will talk about later. This introduction is just and we find out that Destiel is an angel of the Lord. Dean refuses to believe that angels would want anything to do with him. He thinks very low of himself. But Destiel insists over the next few episodes, heaven has work for him to do. They need him and Sam to stop Lilith from breaking the 66 seals that will start the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Sam is sneaking off with Ruby to work on his psychic abilities. He can now exorcise demons with his mind, which saves the human being that the demon is possessing. The few months that Dean was in hell, Ruby was helping Sam perfect these powers, and he keeps this a secret from Dean. Dean, of course, has his own secret, because it wouldn't be Supernatural without secrets. Dean has been telling Sam that he doesn't remember anything from hell, but he does. Destiel sends Dean back in time to meet his parents when they were younger. He learns that Mary made a demon deal with the yellow-eyed demon before she even got married to John. Yellow Eyes killed her parents and John, but told her that he would bring John back if she just agreed to this demon deal. He didn't really give her many details of what the deal entailed, but it was what allowed him to go into the nursery when Sam was 6 months old and bleed into his mouth. Dean tries to stop all of this from happening, but destiny can't be changed. Cass just wanted him to see the origin of it all.
We know what Azazel did to your brother. What we don't know is why. What his endgame is.
Cass knows that Sam has been sneaking out and tells Dean where to find Sam with a warning.
Your brother is headed down a dangerous road, Dean. and we're not sure where it leads. So stop it. Or we will.
Dean shows up to see Sam using his powers, Ruby at his side, and he is incredibly disappointed in Sam. Sam believes he's doing the right thing, he's saving people, and that's a big point of conflict this season, is Sam using his powers and not using his powers, and what it means for him and all of that. Dean and Sam go on some hunts, and one particularly resonates with Sam, that the darkness inside him could easily take over due to his willingness to use his powers, so he decides to stop. Unfortunately, this is only temporary. We meet Uriel, who is another angel that works with Cass. He hates humans, and in particular, he hates Sam and Dean. He explains that he and Cass are going to smite the whole town in order to stop the raising of Samhain. The raising of Samhain is one of the seals that Lilith is trying to break. Dean and Sam argue that they can stop it themselves, asking to give them a chance. And they reluctantly do. They don't stop it, obviously. Sam uses his powers to exorcise the demon, but it takes a lot out of him as he hasn't been using his powers lately. Dean and Cass have a heart-to-heart, and Cass tells him,
Our orders were not to stop the summoning of Samhain. They were to do whatever you told us to do.
Dean finally admits to Sam that he does remember hell, but he doesn't want to talk about it. We are then introduced to Anna Milton. She is a woman who has been admitted into a mental institution because she has delusions about hearing angels talking about the apocalypse. Of course, they are not delusions. She's actually just tuned into angel radio. I realize how ridiculous that sounds. Angel radio is what they call the fact that angels can hear each other, talk to each other. It's like CV radio, but actually angel radio. But she doesn't know why. Pamela uses hypnosis on her to find out what she is repressing.
I remember now. I'm an angel.
While she was one before she fell to Earth, she chose to be human, proving that angels have free will if they are open to it. But she's seen as an abomination and something to be destroyed by the angels. The demons also want her because she has information that they could torture out of her about heaven and what makes angels tick. Alistair is one of those demons. He is the one that tortured Dean in hell. So Sam and Dean are tasked with protecting her from both heaven and hell, but they don't really want to be in the middle of a fight between heaven and hell, which is hilarious. So they try to find Anna's grace, which is her angelic power that she tore out to become human. Somewhere in there, Dean and Anna have sex for some reason, and then the angels and Alistair come to collect Anna. She consumes her grace, banishing Alistair before flying off, and Uriel and Cass have to go find her. Dean opens up about hell.
It was 4 months up here, but down there, it was more like 40 years.
Every day of torturing, Alistair would give him an offer.
To take me off the rack if I put souls on. If I started the torturing.
He held out for 30 years, but then he broke. For those last 10 years of being in hell, he tortured souls.
I wish I couldn't feel anything, Sammy. I wish I couldn't feel a damn thing.
The seals are breaking all over the place, and one of them is to do a ritual sacrifice of reapers. And so Sam and Dean ask Pamela to help them astral project to see why no one is dying in this one town. They find out that the reapers are getting picked up by demons, and they can't reap any souls. Alistair is behind all of this. They stop Alistair, and then everyone who was supposed to die in the past week or however long it was, I can't remember, now dies. This includes Pamela, who was stabbed by a demon while Sam and Dean were astral projecting. Before she dies, Pamela tells Sam,
I know what you did to that demon, Sam. I can feel what's inside of you. If you think you have good intentions, think again.
Then, angels are being killed, and they suspect the demons are doing it. Cass and Uriel capture Alistair, but he's not going to give them any information. So they call in Dean, who is an expert in torture from his time in hell. Alistair does talk, but not about what the angels are looking for. He tells Dean that Dean was the one to break the first seal. He was the one who made it possible for Lilith to start breaking the others.
And it is written that the first seal shall be broken when a righteous man sheds blood in hell. As he breaks, so shall it break.
Sam calls on Ruby for help to go find Dean and stop him from having to torture Alistair. This is when we find out that in order for Sam's powers to really work, he has to drink demon blood. He loads up on it, and Ruby performs a spell to find Dean's location. Sam bursts in and forces Alistair to give up the information.
Lilith is not behind this.
Sam kills him. We then find out that it is actually Uriel that was killing the angels, trying to blame it on the demons. He aligns himself with Lucifer in their shared hatred of humans, and Anna kills him. Cass confirms to Dean that he is the one that started this whole mess.
The righteous man who begins it is the only one who can finish it.
With Uriel being killed, Zachariah comes in to replace him. He creates an alternate reality in which Sam and Dean are not brothers.
Do I know you?
To show them that they will always end up hunting, always end up in the life that they live. It's their destiny. Speaking of destiny, they meet
Chuck Shirley?
also known as Carver Edlund, which is two of the writers' names. He is a prophet of the Lord, and he writes books about Sam and Dean titled Supernatural. I'd say that this is the first real meta episode that they've ever done. Everything Chuck writes comes true because it is prophecy. Chuck has visions of Sam making a deal with Lilith. Sam and Dean want to try to stop that from happening, so they try to go off script, but everything happens just the way Chuck writes it, no matter what. However, as they are nearing the time when Sam is supposed to make this deal, Dean prays for help. Cass shows up and says he can't help, but does give him a tiny bit of indirect advice. Prophets are to be protected at all costs, and they have archangels attached to them. So if they are ever in any danger, the archangels show up and eradicate that danger. So Dean kidnaps Chuck and brings him to the room with Lilith, a very powerful demon. And with the threat of archangels coming, Lilith bolts and no deal takes place. Sam and Dean receive a phone call on their dad's old phone. A young man named Adam Milligan. He says he's John's son. They go to meet with him, and Dean assumes that it's a trap, but it seems legit. John Winchester had another son that he never told Sam and Dean about. Dean believes it was to keep Adam safe and out of the life. However, things turn south when they realize Adam is actually dead, and the thing pretending to be him is a ghoul, and they kill it. Then Castiel visits Dean in a dream and tells him to meet him somewhere. When Sam and Dean go there, Castiel is gone, but his vessel, Jimmy Novak, is there. We see an insight into Jimmy's backstory and meet his family, his wife Amelia and daughter Claire, my gay child. We'll get into that much later, but Jimmy wants to go back home to see them. However, Sam and Dean know that it would put them in danger. But when Sam starts jonesing for some demon blood, Jimmy sneaks out.
What are you doing anyway? I was getting a Coke. Was it a refreshing Coke?
When he gets home, he tries to reconcile with his family, but Sam and Dean are right. A few demons come in and try to attack them. Sam and Dean show up just in time to kill one of the demons, but another possesses Amelia. Jimmy prays to Castiel for him to help, but Cass shows up inside of Claire instead. Sam feeds on one of the demons in front of everyone, including Dean, and then he exorcises the demon inside of Amelia, saving her. Jimmy begs Cass to let Claire go and just inhabit his body again. He does. Dean asks Cass why he wanted them to meet in the first place, but
I learned my lesson while I was away, Dean. I serve heaven, I don't serve man. And I certainly don't serve you.
watching Sam feed on demon blood alarms Dean, and he and Bobby lock Sam into Bobby's panic room to quit his addiction. Cold turkey. While in the panic room, Sam hallucinates. He sees younger Sam, Dean, Mary, all of them pulling him in different directions. Sam's illusion of Mary convinces him that he's doing the right thing by using his powers. Dean and Bobby argue whether they should be keeping Sam locked up or not. Dean is not willing to sacrifice Sam for the greater good of the world, despite the fact that Sam is willing to do so. Dean prays once again. Cass shows up and Dean agrees to be the one to stop the apocalypse, giving himself over to heaven's command so that Sam doesn't have to bear it. And Dean and Cass stare at each other for a whole 14 seconds in silence. Anyway, Cass secretly lets Sam out of the panic room because that is heaven's order. Anna implores Cass to question those orders. Cass has a lot of inner turmoil about this. He does not want to become like Anna. He doesn't want to fall from grace. Sam meets up with Ruby, who knows where a demon close to Lilith is. Dean finds them and they fight. Like, actually physically fight. Sam leaves and Dean tells him,
"You walk out that door. Don't you ever Go back.
echoing John's words many years ago. In order to kill Lilith, Sam needs to drink more blood, but the demon he intends to drink from retreats into the mind of the human it is possessing. So Sam has to basically torture this poor woman and drink her to death. He realizes he's going to be changed forever by this, but he still believes that this is the only way to kill Lilith and save the world. Dean and Bobby tried to find another way, but Dean gets transported to a random room in the middle of a conversation. This is known as the beautiful room or the green room. Zechariah is there. Heaven is ready to use him to kill Lilith, except that's not actually what they want. Dean doesn't want to go into this prize fight without saying he's sorry to Sam, so he asks Cass to bring him to Sam, but he won't. Heaven wants Sam to kill Lilith, because killing her is breaking the final seal. Heaven never wanted to stop the apocalypse, they wanted to start it. They want Lucifer to be released from his cage. Dean tries to convince Cass to help him to turn against Heaven.
The right and there was a wrong here, and you know it. Look at me. You know it. If there was anything worth dying for, this is it.
And he does. But when Dean shows up to stop Sam, Ruby magics the door shut without Sam noticing. Sam kills Lilith, and as Lucifer rises, Ruby explains her master plan and how she played Sam all along.
Even you have to admit, I'm awesome!
Dean beats the door down and stabs Ruby, and a bright light takes over the screen. Lucifer is here. Sam and Dean wake up on an airplane right above the area where they just were. The plane has to make an emergency landing. They live and they make their way to Chuck's house to find Cass, who had gone there to fend off the archangels. Anyway, Cass is dead, Chuck tells them. Zechariah and some other angels show up and tell Sam and Dean that Lucifer is circling a vessel and that they can stop Lucifer, but only with Heaven's help. Dean tells them to shove it and banishes them with an angel banishing sigil, which he says he learned from Cass, but Anna was actually the first one to use it. Weird. Speaking of Lucifer's vessel, we meet Nick. His wife and child were killed, and Lucifer shows up as his wife in his dreams and gets him to say yes. Angels need consent to possess a vessel, and since Lucifer is an angel, an archangel to be specific, he needs consent, and Nick gives it to him. Bobby, Sam, and Dean all try to figure out a way to stop Lucifer, and it seems clear that the only thing that can kill him is Michael's sword, Michael being Lucifer's older brother at this point in time. Chuck has a vision and knows where Michael's sword is. It's in John's old storage locker outside of Buffalo, New York. But he can't call and tell Sam and Dean because the angels are listening, so he sends a fan of his books, Becky Rosen, to tell them instead. It makes no sense to me, but anyway, we'll talk about Becky later. Bobby seems to be helping Sam and Dean, but he is actually possessed by a demon who is reporting back to one of their oldest enemies.
Meg.
Hi.
Meg tries to make Bobby kill Dean, but Bobby fights back and stabs himself in the gut with the demon knife. After dropping Bobby off at the hospital, Sam and Dean make their way to the storage locker, but the angels show up. Zechariah explains that Michael's sword isn't an object.
You're the Michael sword.
Cass appears and scares Zechariah by existing. Zechariah wonders how Cass is alive, and Cass says,
It's a good question. How did these two end up on that airplane? Another good question, as the angels didn't do it. I think we both know the answer, don't we?
Bobby is paralyzed from stabbing himself, and as they are all talking in the hospital, Cass shows up and asks Dean for his necklace. It's an amulet that burns hot in God's presence, and Cass believes the best way to beat the devil is to find and talk to God. The rest of them think it's a terrible plan, and they do not believe in God helping in any way, shape, or form, but they give the amulet to Cass anyway, just in case. Rufus, one of Bobby's friends, calls them and asks for help. Demons are taking over a town. Ellen and Joe are there, but there's a demon in Joe, or so it seems. It turns out that there are no demons. It's actually war, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, making people see things and turn against each other. They notice that War is twisting a ring on his finger and assume that that's where his power is coming from, so they cut it off and take the ring. It's around this time when Sam and Dean think it's best that they go their separate ways, because ever since Sam went off with Ruby to kill Lilith, Dean has been having a hard time trusting him. Sam quits the hunting life and becomes a bartender. He thinks it's for the best that he doesn't hunt anymore because that's how he ended up starting the apocalypse. So,
Hello, Dean.
Cass finds Dean and asks him for help finding an Archangel Raphael who could possibly lead them to God. Since this mission of Cass's is dangerous, it seems that he could die that night again. And of course, Dean knows 2 things for sure.
1, Bert and Ernie are gay. 2, you are not gonna die a virgin. Not on my watch.
Anyway, they go to a brothel and try to get Cass laid, and it's a mess. Cass is obviously uncomfortable, and he offends the sex worker, and just, again, it's a mess. But of course, Dean thinks it's hilarious. They finally do trap Raphael and question him about God. Raphael says,
God. Didn't you hear? He's dead, Destiel.
and that Lucifer was the one who brought Cass back to life because
He needs all the rebellious angels he can find.
despite the night being kind of a waste, Dean tells Cass that he's good without Sam.
I'm really good.
After pretending to be Jess for a little bit, Lucifer shows himself in Sam's dreams and says,
You're my vessel. My true vessel.
so Dean is Michael's vessel and Sam is Lucifer's. This prompts Sam to call Dean and tell him what he's learned. Dean thinks that's even more of a reason that they should stay away from each other, and he decides to take a nap, much to Cass's dismay. And when he wakes up, he's in a dystopian nightmare. Everything around him is in shambles, and he finds the word Croatoan written on buildings. Croatoan is a demonic virus that makes people go into a murderous rage. He sees what the world will look like as the apocalypse progresses. He finds Camp Chautauqua, the home base of a group of non-infected people, Dean, Chuck, and Cass included. It's 2014. But when Dean fell asleep, it was 2009. He finds his future self, who does all the tests on him to make sure that he's not a monster, and once future Dean understands that it's past Dean, he keeps him locked up while he goes on a mission. Dean's kind of the commander of this group of people. I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, in this future world, Dean refused to say yes to Michael, but Sam said yes to Lucifer. So Lucifer wreaked havoc on the world with no one to stop him. Cass is human and takes part in orgies, and it's all very interesting, but the point is that Zechariah, who shaped this reality for Dean, makes his point known. Dean needs to say yes to Michael, or else the world will turn to crap. So Dean comes back to the present, and Zach is about to hurt him, but Cass transports him elsewhere.
It's pretty nice timing, Cass.
We had an appointment.
Don't ever change.
This whole ordeal makes Dean rethink his decision to keep Sam at arm's length. They join back up and bury the hatchet, kind of. Along the way, as they are trying to find another way to ice the devil, they stumble upon the Antichrist,
Jesse, nice to meet you.
who is half demon and half human. He's going to be very important to the plot of defeating Lucifer because he's the most powerful being that they've ever come across. Except he's never mentioned again. Literally ever. At one point, they wake up in TV land. They are in a series of television shows, the first of which is Dr. Sexy MD. And Dean has a completely, absolutely heterosexual reaction to Dr. Sexy.
Oh boy,
What?
it's him.
Who?
It's him, it's Dr. Sexy.
They meet him, and Dean notices that
I swore part of what makes Dr. Sexy sexy is the fact that he wears cowboy boots, not tennis shoes.
of course, it's the trickster, low-key. They had a couple run-ins with him in seasons 2 and 3, but this time, it's different. Play your roles, he says. He wants them to not only be the TV characters, but he wants them to say yes to their respective archangels. Why? Because he's not Loki the trickster, he's Gabriel, the archangel. Michael, Lucifer, and Raphael's brother. They trap him in holy fire and make him explain himself. He wants the fighting in his family to be over, so the only way to do that is for Michael and Lucifer to fight and destroy the Earth. Dean tells Gabe that he's being selfish and that he's just too scared to stand up to his family. Bold. There's an episode where there's a supernatural fan convention, and I'll get to that in my video about Kripke's episodes, but Becky finds out the name of a demon that has the cult, which Sam and Dean think may be able to kill Lucifer. Which brings us to Crowley. Crowley is the first male-presenting demon to kiss another man on the show. Up until this point, they've shown male crossroads demons, but never the kiss to seal the deal.
Your choice. You can cling to 6 decades of deep-seated homophobia, or just give it up and get a complete bailout of your bank's ridiculous incompetence.
He is willing to give the cult to Sam and Dean to kill Lucifer because he believes that Lucifer will kill all the demons anyways because they're just humans with twisted souls. So for survival, he wants Lucifer dead. Joe, Ellen, Bobby, Sam, Dean, and Cass all develop a plan to storm in and kill Lucifer. Bobby stays behind, but when they show up there are reapers everywhere, and only Cass can see them, so he goes to find out why they're there, and he gets captured by Lucifer. The rest of them did not account for Meg to show up with hellhounds. A hellhound goes after Dean, and Joe tries to save him, getting torn up in the process. They all hold up in a hardware store, assaulting the doors so the dogs can't get in. While Joe is bleeding out, she suggests that they build a bunch of bombs and let the dogs in before blowing them up. She would be the one to stay and set off the bomb because she can't move. Ellen doesn't want this to happen, but Joe convinces her.
This might literally be your last chance to treat me like an adult. You might want to take it.
So Dean and Sam build the bombs, and Ellen announces that she is also staying.
No.
Somebody's got to let him in. And like you said, you're not moving. You got me, Joe.
And this is the hardest I've cried while rewatching this show, I swear to God. Whew. Dean and Sam get a head start and the store bursts into flames. Ellen and Joe are dead. Sam and Dean head toward the cemetery where Lucifer is and shoot him with the Colt. It knocks him out, but it does not kill him. Lucifer continues his sacrifice. He's basically slaughtering an entire town for death. Another horseman to be risen. Anna shows up in Dean's very inappropriate dream and tells Dean to meet her somewhere. But instead, Cass shows up and talks to her. The heaven that Anna is now working with wants Sam Winchester dead. Cass sends Sam and Dean back to 1978 because Anna is also going back to that time to kill John and Mary. Sam and Dean try to simply get Mary to leave John because it will have the same effect and they will never be born. But she is already pregnant with Dean. Michael finally shows up, taking young John as a vessel, and he kills Anna. This is the episode where the term Team Free Will is coined. Team Free Will is the name for Dean, Sam, and Cass as a collective group that is trying to save the world.
Team Free Will. One ex-blood junkie, one dropout with $6 to his name, and Mr. Comatose over there.
They're on the side of free will and humanity.
He's in love with humanity.
Over the season, Sam and Dean meet 2 more horsemen, Famine and Pestilence. They beat both of them and gain possession of their rings, the same way that they did with War. They also meet the one and only Sheriff Jody Mills. She lost her son, but he came back as a zombie. In fact, a whole town's dead loved ones are coming back to life, including Bobby's wife, Karen. Bobby can't see the situation for what it is, an omen of the apocalypse. It is death rising and bringing the dead with him. They all turn evil and have to be killed, and Bobby had already killed his wife the first time that she died because she was possessed by a demon, and at the time he didn't really know how to exorcise demons, and Death knew that killing her again would leave him utterly lost and unable to help Sam and Dean stop the apocalypse, which doesn't really match up to later on in the season, but it's alright, let's keep going. At some point, Dean and Sam are shot by 2 random hunters, and they are random because Sam and Dean started the apocalypse and word got around and people are angry. Surprisingly, they go to heaven. While they're there, Zechariah is trying to find them and torture them before he returns them back to their bodies because he's sadistic or something. And Cass wants Dean and Sam to find an angel named Joshua, who is rumored to talk to God with the help of Ash, my darling son. and Pamela, who are in heaven as well. They do find Joshua, but he tells them that God does not want to help. He doesn't think it's his problem.
He put you on that plane. He brought back Destiel. It's more than he's intervened in a long time. He's finished.
When they're put back into their bodies, Dean tells Cass the bad news. Cass gives Dean his necklace back, and Dean throws it in the trash. It should be noted that this necklace is called the Samulet in the fandom because Sam gave it to Dean for Christmas when they were kids. It is revered by some in this fandom. Anyway, Sam is the optimistic of the three of them. He thinks that they will still find a way. In the meantime, they're directed to a town where all the people in it already know about the apocalypse and that it's coming because they have another prophet who sees visions of the future. Sam calls Cass for backup when people start turning on each other. Cass shows up drunk.
I found a liquor store.
And?
And I drank it.
But tells Sam and Dean that the girl in question is not a prophet. He knows all of the prophets' names, and hers is not on the list.
Well, what is she exactly?
The whore.
Wow. Cass, tell us what you really think.
She rises when Lucifer walks the earth, and she shall come, bearing false prophecy.
She tells lies to people and makes them commit atrocious sins in the name of God. Only a true servant of God can kill the whore, so they think that her father, the priest, should be able to do it. However, Dean is the one who ends up being able to do it, and now Sam thinks that Dean is thinking about saying yes to Michael, which he is. But before he does, he heads over to Lisa Braden's house and tells her
that when I do picture myself happy, it's with you.
Which, okay. Zechariah pulls Adam from heaven back to earth. Cass finds him and brings him to Sam and Dean. Zechariah had promised that he would bring back Adam's mom if Adam said yes to Michael. Cass says it's possible because of the bloodline.
It's not perfect, but it's possible.
Cass is angry with Dean this entire episode because Dean is planning on saying yes. They lock Dean in the panic room so that he won't leave and do anything stupid, but he tricks Cass into opening the door by pretending to be hurt. Rude. And he banishes Cass and bolts out the door. He finds some random street preacher and asks him to pray to the angels. Cass shows up and fights Dean in an alley. Not the finest moment between them, I will admit. He takes Dean back to Bobby's.
What the hell happened to him?
Me.
And finds out that Adam was taken in his sleep by Zechariah. They lock Dean back up in the panic room, but Sam lets him out again to go on the mission to save Adam. They need all the help they can get, and Sam actually believes that Dean will do the right thing. No one else does. They go to the beautiful room where Adam is being held, and it's guarded by a bunch of angels. Cass sacrifices himself because
then I won't have to watch you fail.
Dean doesn't fail, however, and he kills Zechariah. Unfortunately, Michael locks Adam in the room, and they don't save him. The pagan gods get together and talk about how much they hate the Judeo-Christian religions, and how their apocalypse is selfish, and all of that. And Gabriel shows up as Loki.
Can't we all just get along?
Gabe has a soft spot for these gods, as they've kind of been his makeshift family for some time now, and he has come around to Sam and Dean's side of things. He wants to stop the apocalypse, but he does refuse to kill his brother, Lucifer. Unfortunately, he has to confront that decision, and Lucifer ends up killing him. Kind of. But Gabe leaves Sam and Dean a clue to trap Lucifer, the Horseman rings. If they collect all of the rings, they can open the cage to trap Lucifer. Pestilence left a big problem in his wake. He got a lot of people sick, and the vaccine that's being developed is laced with the Croatoan virus. I almost said the coronavirus. They find this out with the help of Crowley, who knows a demon close to Pestilence, Brady. He happens to be Sam's old college buddy who introduced him to Jess. He was a demon all along, pulling the strings and deciding Sam's fate.
So I think I'll die on the winning side. Thanks.
Bobby makes a deal with Crowley to find the location of the last horseman, Death. And here's the other character entrance that matches Cass's in my opinion. It's one of the coolest character introductions ever.
Oh, Dad. Oh, Dad. Oh, Dad. Won't you spare me over another? But what is this that I can't see with ice cold hands taking hold of me?
walking, pal.
When God is gone and the devil takes hold, oh, have mercy on your soul, Dad. Oh, Dad.
Bobby's deal also includes getting the ability to walk again, and he, Sam, and Cass go to the vaccine facility to stop the distribution of the vaccine. Meanwhile, Dean and Crowley go to Chicago to try and kill Death. They're in way over their heads with that one, but Death wants to be freed from the hold Lucifer has on him, so he gives Dean his ring willingly with one condition.
You're going to let your brother jump right into that fiery pit.
It's the only way to trap Lucifer, and Death knows it. Dean agrees, but he tells Bobby that he was lying to Death's face. Bobby makes a good point here.
What exactly are you afraid of? Losing? Or losing your brother?
Sam has to consume gallons of demon blood to be able to take on Lucifer. His last request for Dean is that when this is all over, Dean goes to Lisa and lives a normal life. Dean agrees. They attempt this plan, but Lucifer has a leg up on them. Sam loses the fight, and Lucifer walks free in Sam's body. He starts creating chaos and destruction and death everywhere. Dean refuses to let this happen.
I mean, how do we stop it? We don't.
Dean calls Chuck to ask if he's seen what goes down yet. He only knows where the fight between Michael and Lucifer is going to take place, Stull Cemetery in Lawrence, Kansas.
It all has to end where it started, I guess.
So Dean drives there, despite the fact that he has no plan.
The only thing that you're gonna see out there is Michael killing your brother.
Well, then I ain't gonna let him die alone.
Sam and Adam, or Lucifer and Michael, respectively, are there, and they tell Dean to leave. Cass shows up and throws a holy Molotov cocktail at Michael, who disappears for a bit. Lucifer, angry at Castiel, Thanoses him. Lucifer turns on Dean, throws him at the Impala, and Bobby shoots Lucifer, earning him a snapping of the neck. As Lucifer lays into Dean, Dean says,
"It's okay. It's okay. I'm here. I'm here. I'm not gonna leave you."
And Sam, inside somewhere, gets a look at the little army man shoved in the ashtray in the back of the car. It reminds him of his childhood and Dean protecting him. Sam reins in Lucifer, stops him from hurting Dean, and opens the cage. Michael shows up again as Sam jumps in, and Sam pulls him down with him. The cage closes, and the apocalypse has been stopped. Cass comes back to life and heals both Dean and Bobby. Cass and Dean drive in the Impala together, talking about their future plans. Cass is in charge of heaven now, kind of, and Dean is pissed at God for letting all of this happen. He's left without the most important thing in his life, Sam. But he did make a promise to him, and so he goes to Lisa's, and she lets him in. And that's the end of season 5. Oh, but wait. Who's that under the street lamp outside of Lisa's house? It's our Sammy boy. So now it's time for my opinions on seasons 4 and 5. So I love seasons 4 and 5. I've already said that. I love the introduction of the angels and the heaven storyline. I really do. It's something that I think adds so much depth to Supernatural, and I am not a big fan of Monster of the Week episodes, so anytime there's like a myth arc going on, that's what I am more interested in. And so the fact that, I mean, that's all these seasons were. I mean, there were Monster of the Week episodes, and I liked them less than most of the rest of the episodes, but there were still very good Monster of the Week episodes too. Like Yellow Fever was in there.
That was scary.
It's one of the funniest episodes. It was written by Andrew Dabb and Daniel Laughlin. But I think the thing that really makes me excited about these seasons is the introduction of Mary's backstory with the yellow-eyed demon, and the fact that Mary is a hunter. I didn't even mention that in there. She grew up in the hunting life. She knew about demons. She knew about ghosts and everything because her dad taught her all of that, and she didn't want to be in that life anymore. And so that's why she married a guy who was not in the life, John, at the time and wanted to get away from that. So she tried to, but it didn't happen because she made this deal with the Yellow-Eyed Demon and it went south, obviously, and she died, and then John took revenge. But really what kickstarted everything was that John and Mary even met and fell in love in the first place, which was commanded by heaven. The whole idea of them fighting against their destiny is so interesting, and it is still continuing to this day in season 15, but it really came into play in seasons 4 and 5 when they find out that this is their destiny to be Michael and Lucifer's vessels, and then they were like, no. I mean, obviously Sam said yes to Lucifer, but it was to trap him into the cage again. So they were not playing along with God's plan or heaven's plan or whatever it was. And that is like the theme of the entire show, is free will. It's family and free will and destiny and peace versus free will and pain. So you may be in pain a lot of the time because life sucks sometimes, but it's better than being at peace where you don't have that free will. You are under control of someone, God or whatever. Something I didn't mention in the summary, but is very important because we didn't technically learn it in season 4 or 5, is that Chuck is God. You kind of get an idea of it at the very end of season 5. The finale is narrated by Chuck, and he's writing this fight as it happens, and then at the very end of the episode he disappears. So it's kind of implied that he's God, and then outside of the show, the actor who plays Chuck, Rob Benedict, had said that after he was done filming, Kripke came up to him and said, so what was it like playing God? And he was like, what? So, like, we know that he was supposed to be God, but they never really say it until season 11. Another thing that happened in this season that I enjoyed that doesn't really have anything to do with the storyline per se is that there was an episode, Monster of the Week episode, with a siren, and Dean fell under the siren spell, but the siren was a man. And they say in the episode that it's because Dean wanted a little brother who was like just like him and actually agreed with him and blah blah blah, and it's the little brother that he always wanted. Like the entire episode, everyone's getting like lured in by strippers, and even Dean, he's excited that they're doing a case that involves strippers, and then he isn't lured by a stripper, he's lured by this man, but he's straight. So some characters that I want to talk about. Destiel, obviously he was introduced in season 4, and he is one of my favorite characters. The intricacies of Cass, especially in these first 2 seasons that he was in, you know, he is an angel, and at first he's very stoic and cold, but then he grows to have more feelings, and he expresses his own free will and rebels against heaven. So he becomes the Winchesters' greatest ally other than Bobby, and he's obviously very powerful. He can heal people and all this other stuff, so he's very powerful and he's very wonderful and great. Pamela is great. I wish that she was alive still. All she did was help the Winchesters and get killed for it. Just like Ellen and Joe also died in season 5, and they got killed just because they were helping the Winchesters. And I think obviously everyone that helps the Winchesters understands that they're doing it to help humanity. However, why is it that it's always women that die and don't come back? Especially in these seasons, I think this is when that mentality around Supernatural started, where Supernatural hates women. That isn't to say that the writers of the show hate women. There are women writers on the show, but it is to say that there are no leads that are women. There still are no leads that are women. In the later seasons, there are a lot more female characters that stick around. And speaking of, Jodie is one of them that was introduced in season 5, and she continues to this day. She's still alive. The nature of the show is that the show is about men, and it's sad that any of the female characters that are introduced are basically just tools to help the Winchesters achieve their goals, when they could have their own storylines, their own backstories, their own feelings and personalities and everything, but really they just kind of come in and help the Winchesters do whatever they need to do, and then they die when they're not of use anymore. So that happens a lot. I think these days, with the episodes that are happening now and previously in the past few seasons, 15, 14, 13, 12, we have gotten more female characters that have their own storylines, their own feelings, their own motivations, other than helping the Winchesters. And I'm very thankful for that, but it kind of sucks that it didn't really come until like season 12. So anyway, obviously Charlie was one of them too, and she came in season 7, but then she died. Getting off track here, that is something that I know I can speak on as a woman. It's very frustrating to watch that Sam and Dean don't really have room for women in their lives other than their mom, who they idolize and put on this pedestal. And then when she does get brought back to life in season 12, they kind of had built her up in their head, and then she's just this real person that disappoints them. And we'll get into that later, but and the way the fandom treated her, whew, when we get to season 12, I'll talk about that. But anyway, other characters, Zachariah and Uriel, I don't like either of them. Kind of sucks that Uriel is once again a black character that is a villain. Michael is boring, and I'm glad that he was only like in 2 episodes, really. Lucifer, we know I have mixed feelings here about Lucifer. I don't like Mark Pellegrino. It's weird because I like Lucifer in these seasons. Like, obviously I don't like him because he's Lucifer. He's literally the devil and he's killing people or whatever, but I like his storyline in these seasons and Sam and Dean's role in the apocalypse. Like, all of that is very interesting to me and it keeps my attention. I think it adds so much to the show. I mean, it really builds this entire backstory after the fact, and then it continues for the rest of the series. And I really like the angel and demon storylines. I kind of favor them over other stuff. So I do not like Lucifer, obviously, but I appreciate the storyline. And I'm going to mention Gabriel. He's not a character that was introduced this season, but we are now privy to the fact that he is Gabriel, and he has always been Gabriel. That's an interesting twist that they threw in there. And Gabriel himself ends up being an ally to the Winchesters in that very last episode. But even when he was a foe, he was fun and entertaining, and the episodes that he was in were some of the funniest. He's the trickster, you know, he just has this sense of humor. So I really like Changing Channels. That's the episode where they are in TV land. That's one of the best episodes, in my opinion, of both of the seasons. It's a good time. Becky as a character is atrocious. She is a fan of the Supernatural books, and she sexualizes Sam more than Dean, but really both of them, and like makes sexual advances on Sam, like literally touches him when he does not want to be touched. It's really gross, and it upsets me that she is this caricature of a fan of the show. It just paints fangirls as these creepy people who don't know boundaries, and it's frustrating to see that representation of fans. And thankfully, when Becky is brought back in this current season, season 15, she is much more well-adjusted, and she had gone to therapy and everything, and I'm very glad that they gave her this, like, redemption, because it makes you feel like, oh, you guys don't hate us. Like, that's kind of what it made me feel like while watching it, is like, oh, this is what you think of your fans? Like, that's gross. Anyway, I do want to talk about Claire and Jody. Claire and Jody are both in 1 episode each in these 2 seasons, and we barely know Claire. Like, we don't know anything about her. And realistically, she could have been a one-off character, and she was for many, many, many years. But she does come back in season 10, and she is my daughter. I love her so much. I wish that the spin-off of Wayward Sisters with her as one of the main characters was going to be going on, but it unfortunately was not picked up because the CW sucks. But anyway, I love Claire, and Jodie is basically Claire's surrogate mother later on, and I love everything about them. I love both of them so much. Some things that annoyed me were there was a lore change with Michael and Lucifer where Michael is the older brother in these seasons, and later on randomly they decided that Lucifer was
his first son.
I think that in actual Bible lore, Lucifer is God's first son, and that's probably what got lost in translation and everything, but in the show's lore, Michael is the older brother because Dean is the older brother. And anyway, it just bothered me. Also, there's this conversation between Mary and Dean when Dean goes back in time to talk to Mary and tries to stop this deal being made, where they both just ask each other to ask things.
Can I ask you a question?
Can I tell you something?
Can I tell you something?
Like, those three things happen within a 30-minute period of time, and it's like, what are you doing, Carver, who wrote that episode? Why did you write it that way? It's so frustrating to me. Another continuity thing was that Death changed his mind about the apocalypse. He sent this message to Bobby through Karen about how he thinks that Bobby is going to be out of commission, and also that means that he wants the apocalypse to happen. But then actually Death was like, I don't want the apocalypse to happen to Dean, and here's my ring willingly. And it was just kind of a weird flip-flop of how Death feels about the apocalypse, but I don't know. And then another small thing that bothered me was in Dark Side of the Moon when Dean and Sam are getting shot by these random hunters. Oh my god, like one of my biggest pet peeves is when characters introduced and we are supposed to know them already. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but just let me play the scene.
Wait a minute. Is that you, Roy? It is, isn't it? Which makes you Walt.
I don't know them. I don't know Roy and Walt. I've never met them. And not only did we never meet them, but they never mentioned them before. There are many instances in the first 3 seasons where Dean and Sam will just mention someone offhand as if we're supposed to know who they are. And that's one thing. But another thing is introducing these 2 characters as if we're supposed to know who they are, because Dean's like, that's you, isn't it? And you're like, what are you talking about? I have never even heard of these people. They could have easily used 2 names that they've already mentioned previously, or there was already a hunter that was in the show that found out that Sam stopped hunting and went to the bar that he was bartending at and was like, I heard you started the apocalypse, I'm starting stuff with you, basically. And they could have just used that same person because he didn't die. Oh my god. But no, instead you use these 2 random names and acted as if we were supposed to know who they were. I think the reason it bothered me so much was when I was rewatching it, I was like, I remember watching this before and thinking, oh, I should probably know who those people are, but I don't. LOL. Like, that's funny that I didn't remember who they were. But I shouldn't have, because they were never mentioned. They were never talked about. They were never seen before except in this episode. Anyway, moving on. Jesse, the biggest plot hole ever. They don't mention him ever again. I'm pretty sure they never mention him ever again. At some point they might have said like, oh, like Jesse the Antichrist or something. Maybe when they brought in Jack, who is a Nephilim, who is half angel, half human. I think it would be really cool to revisit Jesse because he kind of just vanishes. It would be cool to kind of see where he is. Let's talk about it, okay? The thing I've been waiting to talk about. Destiel. So, Dean and Cass, of course, this is the introduction of their relationship, and I'm like not gonna stop smiling this entire time. Just saying. What a meet cute, you know? Dean stabs him in the freaking heart. There is so much staring in these 2 seasons. There's a scene where Cass... literally, there's other people in the room talking to them, and they won't stop looking at each other.
We'll stop this witch before she summons anyone. Your seal won't be broken and no one has to die.
We're wasting time with these mud monkeys.
I'm sorry.
It's so funny. Of course, you know, we have the handprint. Wish that didn't disappear, but that was like the only time we ever saw it was in the beginning. But it was Cass's handprint on Dean. That's great. Love that. Love that for us. I just love the evolution of their relationship. The fact that they go from like cautious allies to friends to slowly starting to become family. And of course now they are absolutely family, and of course they're in love with each other, but I can't really explain how much I love their relationship with each other. It's just, I mean, I think the best way to go about it is to make a mini fan video, so I'm gonna do that with some of the moments that I really enjoyed over these few seasons with them. Hope you enjoy that.
Who are you? I'm the one who gripped you tight and raised you from perdition.
You don't think you deserve to be saved?
Can I tell you something if you promise not to tell another soul?
Destiel? Well, he's not here. You see, he has his weakness. He likes you.
You made an exception for me. You're different.
My superiors have begun to question my sympathies.
Your sympathies?
I was getting too close to the humans in my charge. You.
You're not in this story.
Yeah, well, we're making it up as we go. Hello, Dean.
Well, you really suck at goodbyes, you know that?
I don't really have much else to say. I do want to say thank you for watching this extremely long video. I've had to stop recording like 4 times, and now my camera is overheating again. I don't know what else to do. I really don't. So anyway, let me know what you think about these seasons in the comments below and what you thought about this video and my opinions on it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And is there anything that you want me to talk about more in these videos? Like any specific part of the show that you want me to elaborate more on or focus more on? I am interested in your perspective. I really enjoyed reading the comments from the last video. It was really cool to see different perspectives on the show, and you know, I agreed with some, disagreed with some, but we were all viewing this show through our own lens, and I am open to all interpretations of this media. I have my own and you have your own, and we can agree, we can disagree, we can also talk about our opinions and see maybe we can meet in the middle somewhere. I'm so excited about this series, and I can't wait to continue on and get to the newer seasons and see what they have to offer, and then eventually really get into the writers and their specific episodes and the trends I'm seeing, which I am starting to see some trends. So I actually have a schedule set up to work around my working schedule to continue this series in a timely fashion. So I'm hoping that my videos will be coming up every 2 weeks. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I don't know. It's supernatural, guys. Apocalypse time. Oh no, my light went off, but it's apocalypse time, so mayhem.